Ms. Lawrence, got 5 minutes.
Thank you. To the panel, in September 2016, the U.S. Government Accountability Office released a study on water infrastructure for selected mid-sized and large cities with declining population. Cities that have the exact same makeup as the city of Flint, Michigan, which you know is a poster child for the lack of investment in water infrastructure. It is alarming what the GAO found. Many mid-sized and large cities throughout the United States, including the Midwest and the state of Michigan, have lost substantial percentage of their population. The loss in population results in declining revenues to address infrastructure needs. The cities are facing numerous infrastructure barriers. I would like to ask Mr. Dalton and then Ms. Pilkalis, can you comment on what extent do you believe regulations are the reasons we have a crisis in our water infrastructure systems? Mr. Dalton first.
Congresswoman, I'm not real sure I understand that question.
My question is that we have repeatedly addressed that regulations is one of the challenges we have in investing in our infrastructure. I want you to articulate, when we look at these mid-sized cities and we're looking at the current crisis we have, what part of that do you believe is on the back of regulations that we have when it comes to investing in our water infrastructure?
So one of those things I think that we need to take a look at with regard to our regulations is, the way we actually justify projects, I think, has an impact on how we invest in infrastructure. One of the things that I said we wanted to look at is how do we expand and consider the total value of a project. And what I mean by that, for instance, relating to your question, is that if a community out there has a master plan, and we look at that and we say, well, this is a regional benefit, not a national benefit. I think what we're saying there is that, people will move from, it's national because if people don't have a job locally or regionally, they'll move to another location. But I think what that is doing to us is that's kind of choking out small and mid-town, mid-city areas, because what happens is when people leave small-town USA or mid-town USA and go to large cities, that creates other problems that we have that we're not really accounting for. I mean, you go to a bigger city, you get bigger traffic problems. You go to a bigger city, you get more unemployment, et cetera. And so one of the things that we're looking at now that I think will help us is how do we account for the value that we lose or that we gain by trying to help those smaller communities rather than just looking at the larger communities.
Even if a project is fully funded, it cannot move forward unless it has all of the necessary environmental approvals. So if you look at the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, effectively all of those projects were even exempt from NEPA through categorical exclusions, and still none of those funded projects were shovel ready because they still needed to go through a whole host of environmental approvals. And so a funded project could take a decade or more to break ground because of the regulations and the environmental approval process. And even another important consideration is even after that project breaks ground, it is subject to being stopped throughout the cycle because of reevaluations or because of citizen suits being brought, because of the very long statute of limitations. Like, for example, with water projects can go on for 3 years.
So my question is, no one has brought this up. We continuously talk about regulations. No one has talked about staffing. So when you say the amount of time it takes to get environmental approval on a project, no one has addressed staffing. And I know that there has been a concerted effort to defund these departments that would handle that. So I would like a truthful statement. Is part of the problem with the regulations the lack of staffing to perform the required analysis?
The answer to that question, I believe, is absolutely, it does impact our ability to process and execute the permit actions or the environmental actions. In fact, what we said earlier is that if you shut down one organization, pick one up or reduce it, the organizations such as EPA or others, then that's going to affect our ability to actually work with that organization to try and have a timely approval of a permit action. So it does affect.
As I wrap up, I just want to be real clear. I understand the impact regulations has, but I'm a very firm believer in that to do it right is worth the checks and balances. But if you defund and don't have the staffing to do it, and we don't update as we move through with technology, then the onus is on us to ensure we are staffed, that we're efficient, we're utilizing technology, and P3s are very important, but water infrastructure is critical as we look at our transportation bill and move forward. Thank you. I yield back.